Matter and void, life-stirring Venus, mother of Aeneas and of Rome, pleasure of men and gods. You make all things beneath the dome of sliding constellations teem. You throng the fruited earth and the ship-freighted sea, for every species comes to birth, conceived through you, and rises forth and gazes on the light. The winds flee from you, goddess. Your arrival puts to flight the clouds of heaven. For you, the crafty earth contrives sweet flowers. For you, the oceans laugh. The skies grow peaceful after showers, awash with light. For soon as morning wears the face of spring, and the west wind is free and freshens, warm and quickening. Airy tribe of birds, O Holy One, is first to start heralding your approach, struck with your power through the heart. Then beasts, the wild and tame alike, go romping over the lush pasture land and swim across the river's headlong rush. So eagerly does each pant after you, so do they heed, caught in the chains of love, and follow you wherever you lead, all through the seas and mountains, torrents, leafy-roofed abodes of birds, and greening meadows. Your delicious yearning goads the breast of every creature, and you urge all things you find, lustily, to get new generations of their kind. Because alone you steer the nature of things upon its course, and nothing can arise without you on light's shining shores, and nothing glad or lovely can be fashioned. I invite you, goddess, stand beside me, be my partner as I write the nature of things. These verses I am striving to set down from Memmius, my friend, your favorite, whom you would crown with every honor and with everlasting accolades. More reason to endow my words with grace that never fades. Meanwhile, Holy One, both on dry land and on the deep, make the mad machinery of war drift off to sleep. For only you can favor mortal men with peace, since Mars, mighty in arms, who oversees the wicked works of war, conquered by love's everlasting wound, so often lies upon your lap, and gazing upwards, feasts his greedy eyes on love, his mouth agape at you, famed goddess, as he tips back his shapely neck, his breath hovering at your lips, and as he leans upon your holy body, and you reach your arms around him. Lady, sweet talk him with honeyed speech, pleading for a quiet peace for Romans. This I ask, for I cannot with easy mind perform my chosen task, nor can the noble scion of the Memmiae fail to heed the call to duty, when our land is in her hour of need. For Godhead by its nature must enjoy eternal life, in utmost peace, removed from us and far from mortal strife, apart from any suffering, apart from any danger, powerful of itself, not needing us, and both a stranger to our attempts to win it over, and untouched by anger. For what's to come, open your eyes, apply keen intellect far from cares, to true philosophy, lest you reject out of hand the gifts that I've assembled for your sake before you fully grasp them. For I now begin to make my discourse on the lofty law of gods and heaven above, and shall reveal the building blocks all things are fashioned of, nature's prime particles, from which she nourishes and grows all things, and into which once more she makes them decompose. We term them in philosophy, according to our needs, matter, atoms, generative bodies, elements, and seeds, and first beginnings, since it is from these that all proceeds. When human life lay on the ground obscenely, in full view, prostrate, crushed beneath the weight of superstition, who stretched down her head from heaven's realms and with their ghastly gaze loomed over mortal men, the first among them who dared raise His human eyes to her was Greek, the first man to withstand her. Neither the mist of gods, nor lightning bolts, nor threatening thunder of heaven hindered him, but, rather, all the more they fired his mind's courage, so that he was the first man who desired to break the close-barred gates of nature down. The vital force of his intelligence prevailed, and he advanced his course far past the blazing bulwarks of the world, and roamed the whole immeasurable cosmos in his mind and in his soul. In triumph he returns to us, and brings us back this prize, to know what things can come about, and what cannot arise, and what laws limit the powers of each, with deep-set boundary stone. Therefore, it is the turn of superstition to lie prone, trod under foot, while by his victory we reach the heavens. One thing I am concerned about. You might, as you commence philosophy, decide you see impiety therein, and that the path you enter is the avenue to sin. More often, on the contrary, it is religion breeds wickedness, and that has given rise to wrongful deeds. And when the leaders of the Greeks, those peerless peers, defiled the Virgin's altar with the blood of Agamemnon's child Iphigenia, as soon as they bound the fillet round her hair, so that its end streamed down her cheeks, the girl became aware that waiting at the temple for her there would be no groom. Instead, she saw her father with a countenance of gloom, attended by the priests who kept the blade well hid. The sight of people shedding tears to see her froze her tongue with fright. She sank to the ground upon her knees. It did not mean a thing for the princess now, that she had been the first to give the king the name of father. No, for shaking, the poor girl was carried by the hands of men up to the altar. Not that she be married with solemn ceremony to the accompanying strain of loud-sung bridal hymns, but as a maiden, pure of stain, to be impurely slaughtered, at the age when she would wed. Sorrowful sacrifice slain at her father's hand instead. All this for fair and favorable winds to sail the fleet along. So potent was religion in persuading to do wrong. Sooner or later, you will seek to break away from me. Won over by doomsayer prophets, they can certainly conjure up for you enough of nightmares to capsize life's order, and churn all your fortunes with anxieties. No wonder, for if men saw that there was an end in sight to trials and tribulations, they would find the power to fight against the superstitions and the threats of priests. But now, they have no power to resist, no way to reason how, for after death there looms the dread of punishment for the whole of eternity. Since we don't know the nature of the soul, is the soul born, or does it enter us at our first breath? And does it die with us? And is it broken down at death? Or does it haunt the murk of Orcus and his vasty halls? Does it slither by some magic into other animals? So Ennius declares, the first among us to bring down from fair Mount Helicon an evergreen and leafy crown, thus making his name famous throughout all of Italy. Yet even so, he sets forth in his deathless poetry that realms of Acheron exist, that there really is a hell, and there neither in the flesh nor in the spirit dwell, but rather something wraith-like of us lingers, wan and weird, and it is from these same infernal regions there appeared the shade of never-fading Homer, who, the poet sings, began to shed salt tears, and to unfold the nature of things. Therefore, we must consider well celestial happenings, and by what principle the sun and moon run on their courses, and all phenomena upon the earth and governing forces, and then especially we must nose into with sharp wits what makes up the soul and what the nature of it is. What do we meet when we're awake, delirious with fever that terrifies the mind, or when we're sepulchred in slumber, so that we think we see and hear such persons face to face, who have encountered death, and whose bones lie in earth's embrace? Nor does it fail me that discoveries, obscure and dark, of Greeks are difficult to shed much light on with the spark of Latin poetry, chiefly since I must coin much new terminology, because of our tongue's dearth and due to the novelty of subject matter. And yet, to this end, your excellence and my sweet hope to win you as a friend, persuade me to tackle any task and take up any toil, and in the still small hours make me burn the midnight oil, as I seek the right words and the right poetry to light brilliant lanterns for your mind, so that at last you might peer deep into the recesses of things once recondite. This dread, these shadows of the mind, must thus be swept away, not by rays of the sun, nor by the brilliant beams of day, but by observing nature and her laws, and this will lay the warp out for us. Her first principle, that nothing's brought forth by any supernatural power out of naught. For certainly all men are the clutches of a dread, beholding many things take place in heaven overhead, or here on earth, whose causes they can't fathom. They assign the explanation for these happenings to powers divine. Nothing can be made from nothing. Once we see that so, already we are on the way to what we want to know. What can things be fashioned from? And how is it, without the machinations of the gods, all things can come about? For if things were created out of nothing, any breed could be born from any other. Nothing would require a seed. People could pop out of the sea, the scaly tribes arise out of the earth, and winged birds could hatch right from the skies. Born willy-nilly, every animal, both wild and tame, would inhabit cultivated land and wilderness the same. The same tree would not always grow the same fruit. What might bear an apple one time, might the next produce a quince or pear. Since there would be no generating particles, then neither would certain things arise from only a certain kind of mother. But since, in fact, each species rises from specific seeds, each thing springs from the source that has the matter that it needs, the primary particles, and comes into the boundaries of light. And that's the reason everything cannot give rise to every other thing, because there is a separate power in distinct things. For why else do we see the roses flower in spring, grain ripen in the heat, and under autumn's sway the grapes pour forth, if not because, each in its proper day, when the right seeds come together, opens out into its birth, when seasonable weather is at hand, and when the teeming earth brings tender growth forth safely onto the shores of light. It's clear that if the things came from nothing, they would suddenly appear at random intervals and at the wrong time of year, for there would be no basic particles of generation to be hindered from a fruitful meeting in a hostile season. Nor, in turn, would things need time to grow, for congregation of basic particles, if things could grow up out of nothing. For babes would shoot up into youths in a flash, and groves would spring suddenly leaping from the earth. But clearly, this is not what happens. All things grow, little by little, as they ought, from a certain seed, preserving their own species as they go. So each thing needs its own kind of material to grow. Consider that without a certain season of rain, the earth could not put forth her gladdening fruits, nor could creatures give birth to young, or stay alive deprived of their food. It makes more sense, therefore, to think that many things have common elements, as words share letters, rather than assume that anything can exist without them. Again, why cannot nature make a man so large that he could wade across the deep to other lands, mighty enough to wrench apart great mountains with his hands, and outlive generations, unless everything consists of certain matter, and this matter limits what exists? We must, therefore, confess that nothing can emerge from nothing, but everything created needs a seed from which to cast into the gentle breezes of the air. Another thing, because we see tilth is more fruitful than untended land, and gives back better harvests cultivated by our hand, it's plain that in the ground the elements of things are rife, since turning rich clods with the plow, we stir them into life. If no such elements existed, then you'd see the soil would grow a richer crop all on its own, without our toil. Add that nature does not render anything to naught, but she instead reduces everything that she has wrought back to its element particles again. For say that anything in all its parts were subject to decay, then snatched of a sudden from our sight each thing would pass away, for there would be no need of any force to make a chink between component parts and to unfasten link from link. But since each thing is made of atoms, those seeds that abide forever, until it meets a force that's able to divide it with a blow, or that can enter it where there is void, then nature won't allow it to be openly destroyed. Besides, if age consumes all the mere material outright, of everything the lapse of time has taken from our sight, then out of what does Venus bring the creatures breed by breed back to the light of life? And what does the crafty earth feed them on and make them grow? Each kind according to its need. What feeds the sources of the ocean, both those fountains found below its surface and the rivers flowing underground, or the ether the stars graze upon? For all that can decay, devoured by the ages, should by now have passed away. But if, in all the span of days gone by, something has stayed, the stuff that makes the universe with which it is remade, these particles perforce are indestructible. Therefore, nothing can be reduced to nothing, as I said before. Again, one cause would send all things wholesale to their demise, if they weren't knit together, loosely or tightly, from the ties of everlasting matter. For the mere tap of a feather would be sufficient to destroy such things not put together from particles of eternal substance. There would be no call for a certain force to fray the bonds of their material. But, as it is, since elements are of eternal stuff, linked with bonds of different strengths, unless a strong enough force encounter it, a thing stays safely as it was. Therefore, nothing turns to nothing. All things decompose back to the elemental particles from which they rose. And finally, when raindrops are cast down from Father Sky into the lap of Mother Earth, they vanish from the eye. But gleaming crops rise up, and trees put forth green leaves and shoots, and the trees begin to grow, and weigh their branches down with fruits. And so we, in our turn, are nourished, and so the wild brutes. Hence we see happy cities all bloom with girls and boys, and the trills of fledgling birds fill up the leafing woods with noise, and herds and flocks, made sluggish with their fat, lay down their bulk in rich pastures, their heavy udders oozing with white milk, and lambs go frolicking across young grass on wobbly legs, their new-born noggins tipsy on milk drunk straight from the kegs. Thus, things that seem to perish utterly do not. See how nature refashions one thing from another, and won't allow a birth unless it's midwived by another's death. Come now, since I have taught that nothing's made of nothing, and once brought into existence cannot be recalled again to naught, just in case you start to think this theory is a lie, because these atoms can't be made out by the naked eye, you yourself have to admit that there are particles which are, but which cannot be seen. First, take the force of squalls that whip up and lash the ocean, founder seagoing ships and scatter the clouds, or sweeping hurricanes that scour the plains and batter the mountain tops with forest-snapping blasts, strewing their path with massive trees. So fiercely does the wind roar in its wrath. Thus clearly there are particles of wind you cannot spy, that sweep the ocean and the land in clouds up in the sky, snatching them in a sudden twister. And these bodies flow and deal their devastation just like water. For although water is soft, yet when a stream is swelled by heavy rain, that avalanches in an instant down a towering mountain. It crashes broken branches and whole trees together. Not even stalwart bridges can withstand the sudden onslaught. So mighty is the swirling mass of rain upon its course, so strong the river hitting the sturdy piles with all its force. The flood wreaks havoc with a roar and rolls huge stones below, its rush dashing away all obstacles standing in its flow. Therefore, it follows gusts of wind are borne along as well, just like a powerful river when they come sweeping down pell-mell, driving all things before them blow by blow, battering down or snatching things up into the rapid swirling of a cyclone. And so I say, again and again, that wind is made of matter, for though invisible, it acts in the same way as water, which clearly is a substance. Moreover, we sense various smells, although we never see the odor wafting towards our nostrils. We cannot see the scalding heat, or see the cold. Likewise, we are not in the habit of noting voices with our eyes, but what acts upon our senses is material, inasmuch as without body nothing is tangible, nor can it touch. Moreover, clothing hung up by a breaker-beaten shore grows damp, but if you spread it in the sun, it dries once more. Yet how the moisture came and went you cannot see at all, and so the water must evaporate in drops so small they escape detection by our eyes. Year after circling year, the ring upon a finger thins from inside out with wear. The steady drip of water causes stone to hollow and yield. The curving iron of the plowshare fritters in the field by imperceptible degrees. The cobbles of the street we see are polished smooth by now from throngs of passing feet, and at the city gates right hands of statues made of brass are worn away by touches of greeting hands that pass. And thus we see things dwindle by their being rubbed away. But what is lost at any given moment we can't say, because our stingy sense of sight will never let us see. Lastly, whatever days and nature add on gradually to things, that makes them grow at a moderate pace, cannot be seen. No matter how you stare and squint, your sight however keen, neither are you able to perceive what disappears at any given time. When things grow too old and waste with years, or rocks are gnawed away with sea brine. Thus these things are done by nature, using bodies that are visible to none. Yet the universe is not one solid mass, all tightly packed. There's also emptiness in things, which is a useful fact in many matters, one that will not let you go astray, perplexed about the universe and doubting what I say. For if there were no emptiness, nothing could move, since it's the property of matter to obstruct and to resist, and matter would be everywhere at all times. So I say, nothing could move forward because nothing would give way. But as it is, we notice that before our very eyes many things are moving various ways throughout the skies, above our heads, and on dry land, and in the briny ocean. Sans void, these would not only lack for agitated motion, but existence altogether. They could no way come to pass with all things at a total standstill, chock-a-block with mass. Why, even solid things are not as dense as they appear. Everything is riddled with emptiness, as I'll make clear. Take a rock. Through walls of stony caves a clammy moisture seeps, and all around the place with many drops of water weeps. Food is dispersed through the frames of animals, and fruits are put forth in good time by a growing tree, as it distributes nutrients through trunk and branches from the deepest roots. Voices pass through halls and fly through rooms across closed doors. Stiffening chills creep to the marrow. But if there were no pores, no openings that particles were able to pass through, none of this would happen. Lastly, why do we see two objects of the same size differ in their weight? Instead, if a ball of yarn contains the same amount of mass as lead, then they should weigh the same, since mass's property is to press all downward, while the property of void is weightlessness. So that which is of lighter weight, but seems the same in size, reveals without a doubt it has more void within. Likewise, an object of the same size that is heavier must contain more matter in it and much less emptiness. It's plain. Clearly, therefore, what we're tracking with keen-scented wits, what we call void, is tangled up with things and must exist. Here I must run ahead, warn you what some wrongly declare, lest you be detoured from the truth. For certain people swear that water yields to scaly fishes nosing through, and make liquid channels open up, since fish leave in their wake room for the yielding waves to flow together. So however full the universe, things can change places with each other. I'll have you know, this line of reasoning can have no base. For where can scaly fishes swim if water won't give place? And where can water flow back into if the fish can't budge? So matter is either deprived of movement, or else we must judge void is enmeshed in things, and is where movement gets its start. Lastly, if two objects bump and then leap far apart, air must rush in to occupy that vacuum. Furthermore, no matter with what swiftness the swirling currents flow together, even so they cannot fill the empty space at once, but flow first to the nearest part, and then the next, and thence they fill up the entire space. If anyone, perchance, thinks this happens right when the two objects spring away, because the air condensed itself, then he has gone astray. For in that case, a vacuum's made that wasn't there before, while void that pre-existed isn't empty anymore. And even if air could compress that way, it's doubtful whether sans void it could condense and draw its particles together. Therefore, drag your feet and make excuses how you will, yet emptiness must exist in things. You must confess it still. Though I can scrape together many proofs to make my case, these few, faint footprints are sufficient. You yourself can chase the others down, with your keen nose for reason. As a pack of hounds, once it has stumbled on the sure scent of the track, can sniff out mountain-ranging quarry from its thickety lair, so you can find one clue after the next in this affair, and wriggle into every den and drag the truth from there, lurking deep inside. But if instead you are remiss and shrink a little from our task, then I can promise this, Memmius, upon my word, my honeyed tongue shall pour such bountiful and copious mountains from my mind's rich store. I fear that sluggish age will creep upon us with its chill, and loose the locks of life before I've had a chance to fill your ears with all the flood of evidence that I can use, here in my case, on any given subject that you choose. To pick up the thread where I left off, the universe's nature consists, in essence, of two different things. For there is matter and there is void, in which the particles of matter move hither and thither. The senses that men have in common prove, in and of themselves, that matter is. Unless we place our firm faith in sensation, we shall have nothing to base conclusions on concerning what lies hidden from our view, nor could our reasoning confirm that anything is true. Then, further, if there were no place or space, that which we call void, then particles would not have anywhere at all in which to be or move in any direction to or fro, which I have demonstrated to you just a while ago.